Welcome to this presentation on MLA citations. I'm Patricia Morris, Coordinator of Library Research at the Florida Gateway College Library. This video is part 2 on how to do MLA citations. We're going to discuss core elements in the MLA citation style and give examples of how to do entries in the Works Cited list. Citation styles have a lot of rules, but the number one rule is to always follow your instructor's directions, even if they differ from the formats given here. MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. In April 2016, they released the 8th edition of the MLA Handbook, shown here on the right. Your instructor may require you to use the citation rules explained in the 8th edition, or use the 7th edition, shown on the left. If you're not sure which style to use, ask your instructor. This video will focus only on the 8th edition. The new MLA citation style uses universal core elements that can be applied to any resource format, so you don't have different rules for print sources and online sources. The punctuation is simplified and much more straightforward. Sometimes there's more than one correct way to do a citation depending on what your focus is. But the reason we include citations, besides giving credit for the work of others, is to make your documentation useful to readers. These are the 9 core elements used in MLA style, and we're going to go through each one. While these elements can be applied to any type of format, there are still a lot of rules and details. Notice the punctuation that's included in this graphic. That indicates whether you put a period or comma at the end of the element. Here's the basic format for an MLA Works Cited entry. Note that the first 2 elements, author and the title of source, are followed by periods. All other elements have commas, except for the last element, location, which concludes with a period. All entries are double-spaced, and you indent by 1/2 inch the second and subsequent lines of an entry. Also, note that for books, you want to use the information from the title page or the back of the title page, called the verso, not from the cover or spine of the book, which sometimes can be different. The first core element is the author. For all our examples today, the specific element we're focusing on is highlighted in red. If your source has one author, you simply invert the name and put last name, comma, first name, period. So we have Lupton, comma, Rosamund, period. If your source has 2 authors, you invert the first author's name, then a comma, then the word and then you put the second author's name in regular name order, first name, last name, and ending with a period. Note that in our example, Gates, comma, Henry Lewis, comma, Jr. Jr. is part of his name and is abbreviated Jr. period, then comma, the word and the second author. If Henry Louis Gates Jr. was the sole author, the element would end with a period in Jr. If you have 3 or more authors, you invert the first author's name, comma, followed by et al., ending with the period after et al. You may use sources that have editors instead of authors, or a resource could be a collection of works with authors that's gathered in a book with an editor. How you treat these depends on what you're focusing on. For example, let's say your resource is a book that is a collection of essays, each with a different author, and the entire book has an editor. If you're citing the book as a whole and not one specific essay, then you would put the editor in the author position as the first element, as shown here in the example, Alan, comma, Roger, comma, editor, period. If your focus is on the original author, you would include that name as the first element and put the editor's name in a different position. In the next example, William Cowper's poem, Light Shining Out of Darkness, is included in the book The Atlantic Book of British and American Poetry, edited by Edith Sitwell. We're citing the single poem and put the poet as the first element and the editor in a contributor position, which we'll talk about more shortly. Another example shows a chapter, Apollo 13, authored by Andrew Chaikin, in a book called Past Imperfect, which is edited by Mark C. Carnes and he's one of 3 or more authors, so his name is followed by et al. If your resource has no given author, start the entry with the next element, which is the title of source. A source may have a corporate author, such as a company, institution, association, organization, or government agency. Include the corporate name as the author, but leave off the before the name of the organization. If the corporate author is also the publisher, then you don't put it as the author. In that case, start the entry with the title and include the corporate name in the publisher position, which is element 7. In this example, Time Inc. is the author and the publisher of Exploring the Unexplained, the world's greatest marvels, mysteries, and myths. We list Time without the Inc. in the publisher position. Next, we're going to talk about titles, and there are 2 kinds, the title of source and the title of container. The title of source refers to the direct and specific resource you're using for your research. This would be a standalone book title, or a chapter title, or an article title, or a specific page on a website. If you use a video from YouTube or watched a TV show on Netflix, it would be the name of the video or TV show. The title of container refers to the larger resource that contains the title of source. This would include the book that contains the chapter, the journal that contains the article, or the main website that has the specific web page. It would also be the database that the journal article is found in. Think of it as the larger whole that the source is one piece of. Note that you'll always have a title of source, but won't always have a title of container. If you're citing a standalone printed book in its entirety, there is no larger container, just the book. And sometimes you'll have more than one container. An article in a journal accessed through a database would have the article title as the source, the journal title as container 1, and the name of the database as container 2. A little later in part 3, we'll be using a template that will make sorting all this out much clearer. When dealing with the title, how do you know whether to put it in quotation marks or italics? If your title can be included as part of a larger work, put it in quotation marks. This would include article, chapter, or poem titles included in books or journals or websites. And here's a hint to remember this. Quotation marks look like little pieces, so you put the smaller work or smaller piece that could be included in a larger work in quotation marks. If your title is that larger work, the journal title or the database title or the title of the collection of short stories, put it in italics. If your resource is a standalone book and has no container, put the book title in italics also. The 4th element is other contributors. Earlier we talked about authors and editors. When you include the editor's name, but it's not in the author position as the first element, it's in the other contributors position and gives the role played by the contributor. Besides edited by, other examples of contributions include translated by, illustrated by, or narrated by. In the first example, the book Murder on the Leviathan is by author Boris Akunin and translated by Andrew Bromfield. In the second example, we have an audiobook called Caleb's Crossing. The author is Geraldine Brooks, and we include the narrator Jennifer Ely in the other contributors position. The next element is version. You would include this if your resource indicates it is a revised edition or second edition or abridged. Include this if it's important to identify which edition you've used. Note that we use abbreviations for edition and revised. Also note that the capitalization for the version element may vary, and this depends on what elements we use and their punctuation. In the first example, we have an audiobook, Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. We also include narrated by Richard E. Grant in the other contributors position, which is followed by a comma. The next element, the version, abridged edition, follows the comma after Grant and so begins with a small a. In the second example, for David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, the version abridged edition follows the title element David Copperfield, which ends in a period. Therefore, the abridged edition begins with a capital A because it follows a period. The next element is for number and refers to volume and issue numbers. These usually are used by periodicals, which include journals, magazines, or newspapers, but could also refer to the specific volume if you used one volume out of a 4-volume print reference. If your resource gives a volume and/or issue number, include it here. Note that you abbreviate volume as VOL period, and you write the issue number simply as NO period. You don't use the word issue. If your resource only has a volume number and no issue number, or only has an issue number and no volume number, include whatever is indicated. The next element is the publisher. You omit the publisher altogether for periodical titles. Always abbreviate press as P and university as U if part of the publisher's name. Oxford University Press would be written as Oxford UP. And omit business words like company, corporation, incorporated, or limited, or their abbreviations. The 8th of our 9 elements is the publication date. For a print book, use the copyright date found on the title page or verso. Most periodicals will have a date in one of the formats given here. Note that you abbreviate the month except for May, June, and July. If the work shows more than one date, like a reprinted article, you're to use the date that is most meaningful or relevant to your research. In this example, the article A Day in Town originally appeared in the New Yorker magazine on January 25, 1941, but we're citing the book whose title is The New Yorker Book of War Pieces, London 1939 to Hiroshima 1945, so we give the publication date of the book 1947, which is where the reader would find our source. You may not find a publication date on some sources, such as websites, and if so, just omit it. The final element is the location. This could refer to page numbers or to online locators. For print sources, give page numbers using the format P period and then the page number for a single page, or PP period for multiple pages. If the pages are not consecutive, indicate such as PP period followed by the first page number and a plus sign. In our example here, note that we only have 4 elements. There is no given author, container, other contributor, version, or number, so we cite what we have: the title of source, publisher, date of publication, and location. For online sources, you should have a DOI or URL. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier and is a unique alphanumeric string provided by the publisher. You would find it on the detail page of an article in a database like this. You write DOI in small letters. If the DOI is available, it's the preferred method instead of using the URL. If you use the URL, omit http:// or https://. If a permalink or bookmark is available, provide that. Often URLs are very long, but don't use shortening services like bit.ly or tinyURL. You can break a long URL at the end of a line, at a point of punctuation, or at a symbol. Use the URL that provides easiest access to the resource for your reader. Including the date you access the website is optional, but you may want to include it if it's helpful to your reader. And that's it. That's all 9 core elements in the new MLA citation style, and it includes a lot of rules and details, doesn't it? But remember that you won't always use all 9 elements in an entry, and remember that the proper punctuation is shown following the element name. MLA provides this template to help organize your information, and we'll go into detail on how to use this template in Part 3. We hope this presentation has been helpful to you. If you have any questions about using MLA citations, please don't hesitate to ask us for help in the library. We're here to help you be successful in your classes. Thanks for watching, and good luck!